My name is Cullen Harrison, and I'm 32 years old. After 4 amazing years with Rachel, I finally proposed and wanted to celebrate with a perfect engagement party. I should have known my sister Diana would find a way to make it about her. She always has. Growing up, she stole every spotlight moment from me, but this time felt different. Something was off about Diana all evening, the loose clothing, the water instead of champagne, how she kept eyeing the microphone. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever dealt with a spotlight-stealing family member. Trust me, you'll want to see how I finally stood up to mine. Growing up with Diana was like living in a constant competition that I never signed up for. Being 3 years older should have given me some advantages, but Diana made sure that was never the case. She was the type of sister who couldn't stand to see attention focused on anyone but herself, especially me. I still remember my 10th birthday like it was yesterday. My parents had organized a backyard party with all my friends, complete with a magician, and my favorite chocolate cake with buttercream frosting. Everything was perfect until the moment I was about to blow out my candles. Suddenly, Diana let out this blood-curdling scream from the trampoline. She'd been jumping the entire time perfectly fine, but chose that exact moment to fall and clutch her ankle. Of course, everyone rushed to her side, including my parents, who completely forgot about the birthday boy with 10 unblown candles melting into his cake. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Diana's injury miraculously healed, I found her eating my birthday cake in the kitchen. "You should be more careful," she said with frosting on her face. "Jumping on trampolines is dangerous." She was 7 years old and already a master manipulator. This pattern continued throughout our lives. When I graduated high school as class valedictorian, a moment I'd worked incredibly hard for, Diana chose the exact moment I stepped up to the podium to have what my parents later called an anxiety attack. She sobbed so loudly that people couldn't hear my speech, and my father had to leave the ceremony to calm her down. Later, I found out she'd been completely fine at a friend's house 30 minutes later. Perhaps the most calculated incident was when I received my college acceptance letter to Cornell. I was the first in our family to get into an Ivy League school, and for once I thought even Diana couldn't overshadow this achievement. How wrong I was. While I was showing my parents the acceptance letter, Diana burst into the room announcing she would be skipping her junior year of high school because of her exceptional academic performance. My parents immediately shifted their attention to their prodigy daughter, completely forgetting about my accomplishment. My parents never saw these patterns. To them, Diana was their precious daughter who could do no wrong. They'd dismiss my frustrations with phrases like, "That's just how siblings are," or, "Don't be so sensitive, Cullen." Their enabling behavior only reinforced Diana's belief that she could get away with anything. That's why I chose Cornell. It was over 2,000 miles away from home. I needed that distance to breathe, to discover who I was outside of Diana's shadow. College became my sanctuary. I worked part-time jobs to minimize relying on my parents financially, and by junior year I was completely self-sufficient. I stayed in New York after graduation, building a career in architectural design that I was genuinely proud of. Then came the rainy Tuesday that changed everything. I ducked into a coffee shop to escape a sudden downpour, and there she was, Rachel Mitchell. She sat in the corner with architectural sketches spread across her table, completely absorbed in her work. I noticed we had the same coffee order when the barista called Americano for Rachel right after mine. It was the opening I needed to start a conversation. Rachel was brilliant, passionate about sustainable urban planning, and refreshingly straightforward. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We talked until the restaurant staff started putting chairs on tables. With Rachel, I felt seen for the first time in my life. She listened, really listened, when I talked about my family dynamics. She didn't dismiss my feelings or tell me I was overreacting. Instead, she helped me understand the patterns and, more importantly, how to set boundaries. Our relationship progressed naturally over the next 4 years. We moved in together after 18 months, adopted a rescue dog named Charlie, and built a life that felt wholly ours. Rachel taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about respect and mutual support. When I introduced Rachel to my family, she saw through Diana immediately. "Your sister's got some issues," she whispered to me after dinner. "The way she tried to one-up every single thing you said. That's not normal sibling rivalry." Having Rachel's perspective validated what I'd felt my entire life but had been conditioned to ignore. With Rachel's encouragement, I started establishing healthier boundaries with my family. I limited our visits, kept them short, and most importantly, I stopped seeking their approval. It wasn't easy, and Diana certainly noticed the change. Her attempts to get under my skin became more obvious, which ironically made them easier to handle. When I decided to propose to Rachel, I chose the lake where we'd first said I love you under a meteor shower. I spent months designing a custom ring that incorporated elements of the architectural sketches she'd been working on when we met. When she said yes, we both cried, overwhelmed by the perfect simplicity of the moment and the future we were building together. I was hesitant about how to involve my family in our engagement. Part of me wanted to elope and avoid the drama altogether, but Rachel wisely pointed out that starting our marriage by avoiding issues wouldn't set a healthy precedent. "We can include them on our terms," she said. "This is our story to write." I truly believed that at 32, I was finally ready to write a new chapter, one where old family dynamics wouldn't dictate our happiness. I wanted to believe Diana, now 29, might have matured enough to be genuinely happy for me. It was this hopeful thinking that led us to plan an engagement party where both our families could celebrate together. In retrospect, I should have known better. Planning the engagement party became a project that Rachel and I threw ourselves into with enthusiasm. We wanted something elegant but intimate, a celebration that reflected our relationship and the life we were building together. After visiting several venues, we settled on Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant with a private room overlooking the city skyline. The space could comfortably accommodate 60 guests, which seemed perfect for our closest friends and family members. Rachel suggested we handle the planning ourselves rather than involving my parents too much. "It's about establishing the tone for our wedding," she explained. "If we let your parents take over the engagement party, they'll expect the same control over the wedding." She was right, of course. My parents, particularly my mother, had a tendency to steamroll over my preferences in the name of helping. When I called my parents to share the engagement news, their reaction was predictably mixed. My father offered a genuine congratulation, while my mother immediately launched into questions about Rachel's family background and whether we'd considered a summer wedding at the country club where Diana had always dreamed of. "Getting married. We haven't made any wedding plans yet, Mom," I explained. "We're just enjoying being engaged and planning a small party to celebrate with family and friends." "Well, be sure to include your sister in the planning," she insisted. "She's very good at these things, you know." Her college roommate's wedding was featured in Modern Bride because of Diana's input. I bit back the urge to point out that Diana had barely finished college after changing her major 5 times, and that her event planning skills mainly involved making everything about herself. Instead, I simply assured my mother that we'd keep Diana informed. Diana's initial reaction to our engagement announcement was strangely subdued. "Wow, you and Rachel, huh? That's nice." The lack of enthusiasm was actually a relief. I'd been expecting some kind of dramatic response designed to pull focus. Within days, however, the calls started. Diana suddenly had endless suggestions for our engagement party. She called 3 times in 1 week to discuss everything from the menu, "Seafood is more sophisticated than Italian," to the decor, "You should do a theme, Cullen. No one does plain engagement parties anymore." The questions about the guest list were particularly persistent. "Will there be photographers?" she asked during one call. "Professional ones, I mean, not just friends taking phone pictures." "We've hired someone to take casual shots," I explained. "Nothing elaborate, we're saving the big photography budget for the wedding itself." She paused. "You should definitely have a step and repeat backdrop. People expect that now." "It's not that kind of event, Diana," I said firmly. "It's a dinner party to celebrate with our close friends and family, not a red carpet event." Her sudden interest in our party planning felt off, but it wasn't until a family dinner 3 weeks before the engagement party that the warning signs became impossible to ignore. Diana arrived with a new boyfriend in tow, Marcus Whitaker, a successful real estate developer she'd apparently been dating for a while, though none of us had heard of him before. Marcus was 34, well-dressed, and seemed genuinely smitten with Diana, which was a change from her usual pattern of dating men she could easily manipulate and then discard. What struck me most, however, was Diana's outfit. My sister had always dressed to accentuate her figure, but that night she wore a flowing bohemian-style dress that carefully concealed her midsection. When my mother offered her wine, she declined, claiming she was on a cleanse. Throughout dinner, she made cryptic references to big life changes and important news coming soon. At one point, when the conversation turned to our engagement party, Diana smiled mysteriously and said, "I have a feeling it's going to be a night everyone remembers." The way she exchanged glances with Marcus sent a chill down my spine. On the drive home, I mentioned my suspicions to Rachel. "Do you think Diana might be pregnant?" I asked. The loose clothing, the water, instead of wine, the mysterious new boyfriend, who she's suddenly serious with. Rachel considered this. "It's possible. And if she is, what are the odds she'll announce it at our engagement party?" "About 100%, I sighed. That would be classic Diana. "Let's not borrow trouble, Rachel," said, squeezing my hand. "Maybe she's actually turned a corner. People do grow up. Eventually." I wanted to believe Rachel was right. Perhaps Diana had finally matured enough to let someone else have their moment. Perhaps her new relationship had given her the security and attention she'd always craved from elsewhere. Perhaps this engagement party would actually be the drama-free celebration we were hoping for. Despite my attempts at optimism, I couldn't shake the feeling that Diana was planning something. I even considered calling her directly to ask if she was pregnant, and to request if she was that she not make any announcements at our party. But I knew such a preemptive move would only create drama with my parents if Diana denied everything. They'd accuse me of being paranoid and trying to exclude my sister from our happiness. So instead, I pushed my concerns aside and focused on finalizing the details for our special evening. The invitations had been sent, the menu selected, the champagne ordered. Rachel and I were excited to celebrate our engagement with the people who mattered most to us, and I was determined not to let my sister's potential drama overshadow our happiness. In retrospect, this willful ignorance was exactly what Diana was counting on. The evening of our engagement party arrived with perfect early autumn weather, clear skies, and just enough crispness in the air to make the city skyline visible for miles through Bellini's floor-to-ceiling windows. Rachel and I arrived early to add some personal touches to the private dining room. Framed photos from our relationship journey, custom cocktail napkins, with our initials and candles that filled the space with the scent of cedar and vanilla, reminiscent of the lake where I'd proposed. The restaurant staff had transformed the space exactly as we'd envisioned. White fairy lights twinkled across the ceiling beams, creating the feeling of dining beneath stars. Round tables with cream linens surrounded a small central space for toasts and mingling. Along one wall stood a table for gifts and cards, beside it a vintage Polaroid camera and guest book where friends could leave photos and messages. "It's perfect," Rachel whispered, squeezing my hand as we surveyed the room. She looked stunning in a champagne-colored cocktail dress that complemented the subtle rose gold of her engagement ring. For a moment, I forgot all my concerns about family drama and simply felt grateful for the life we were building together. Guests began arriving at 7. Rachel's parents, David and Margaret Mitchell, were among the first, punctual and warm as always. They embraced me with genuine affection that still felt novel after years of emotional distance from my own family. "We always hoped Rachel would find someone who values her as much as we do," David told me quietly, clapping me on the shoulder. My college roommate Jason arrived with his wife, followed by colleagues from both our firms and friends we'd made as a couple over the years. The room gradually filled with laughter and conversation, the atmosphere exactly as we'd hoped, elegant but relaxed, celebratory but intimate. My parents arrived precisely on time, my mother immediately cataloging everything from the decor to the guests with her critical eye. "Lovely space," she said, though her tone suggested she would have chosen differently. My father, more genuine in his enthusiasm, hugged me tightly and whispered, "Proud of you, son," which meant more than he knew. By 7:30, the party was in full swing, and almost everyone had arrived except Diana. Her absence was conspicuous, especially to my mother, who kept glancing toward the door while maintaining conversations with Rachel's extended family. I'd just begun to hope that perhaps Diana had decided to skip the event entirely when the door opened, and there she was. Diana made her entrance at precisely 7:45, late enough to be noticed, but not so late as to miss the main events. She wore a silver dress that somehow managed to be both form-fitting and strategically loose around the middle, paired with lower heels than her usual stilettos. Marcus, dapper in a charcoal suit, kept his hand proprietarily at the small of her back as they entered. The first red flag was Diana's drink order, sparkling water with lime, when the waiter offered champagne. Diana loved champagne. In fact, she typically used any celebration as an excuse to indulge. The second warning sign was how she kept glancing at her watch throughout the first hour, as though timing something precise. Most telling, however, was how Diana positioned herself throughout the early part of the evening, always within easy reach of the microphone stand we'd set up for toasts, hovering nearby whenever it seemed someone might approach it. She and Marcus whispered frequently, their heads bent together, followed by Diana's glance in my direction, with what I can only describe as calculated anticipation. Despite these concerning signs, the first half of our engagement party progressed beautifully. The catering staff circulated with trays of appetizers while guests mingled and congratulated us. Rachel's sister Tiffany had created a slideshow of photos chronicling our relationship, which played on a subtle loop on one wall. At 8:30, we gathered everyone for the planned toasts. Jason went first, sharing embarrassing stories from our college days before offering a heartfelt wish for our future. Rachel's father spoke next, his voice catching as he welcomed me to their family. "Some fathers worry about the men their daughters choose," he said. "But I've never had a moment's concern about Cullen. He sees my daughter exactly as she deserves to be seen." My father's toast surprised me with its emotional depth. He wasn't typically demonstrative, but that night, he spoke about watching me grow from a determined boy into a man of character. "I've always been proud of you," he said, meeting my eyes directly, even when I didn't say it enough. Throughout these speeches, I kept noticing Diana checking her phone, her impatience barely concealed beneath a tight smile. When Rachel's mother rose to offer her toast, Diana's posture changed. She straightened, angled slightly toward the microphone like a runner preparing for the starting gun. After the formal toasts concluded, the staff brought out a small celebration cake, decorated with architectural elements that paid homage to how Rachel and I met. We cut it together, feeding each other the first bites, as the photographer captured the moment. The evening was progressing exactly as planned, warm, meaningful, and focused on our journey together. As dessert was being served and conversations resumed around the tables, I briefly let myself believe we might have avoided Diana's drama after all. Rachel and I circulated among our guests, accepting congratulations and sharing the story of the proposal to those who asked. I noticed Diana continuing to check her watch with increasing frequency, whispering something to Marcus that made him nod and position himself near the small stage area. The cake had been fully served, and the party had reached that pleasant stage of the evening where people were relaxed and enjoying each other's company. Rachel and I had just finished speaking with her grandparents when I saw Diana straighten her dress and move purposefully toward the microphone. My stomach dropped as I realized what was about to happen. I reached for Rachel's hand, and we both froze as Diana tapped the microphone twice, the sharp sound cutting through the ambient conversation like a warning shot. "Excuse me, everyone, could I have your attention for just a moment?" Diana's voice rang out through the private dining room, amplified by the microphone she'd grabbed with practiced confidence. The buzz of conversation quickly faded as guests turned toward her, many with curious expressions. Rachel's grip on my hand tightened. Diana stood center stage, the soft lighting somehow managing to create a halo effect around her, something she'd no doubt planned when she positioned herself. Marcus moved to stand beside her, his hand resting protectively over hers. "First, I want to congratulate my brother Cullen and his beautiful fiancée Rachel." She gestured toward us with her champagne glass filled with water. I now realized with certainty. Finding love is such a precious gift, and I'm so happy you've found each other. The words sounded rehearsed, lacking genuine warmth. I recognized the tone from countless childhood moments, the preamble before she would steal my thunder. Diana paused, her eyes scanning the room to ensure all attention was fixed on her. "Since we're all gathered here as family to celebrate one wonderful piece of news, Marcus and I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to share some joy of our own." My mother gasped audibly from across the room, already guessing what was coming. Rachel's parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We're thrilled to announce that we're expecting." Diana's voice rose with theatrical excitement as her free hand moved to rest on her stomach. "I'm 4 months pregnant." Marcus beamed beside her as scattered applause and exclamations of surprise rippled through the room. Diana wasn't done, though. As the initial reaction subsided, she looked directly at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sorry, Cullen," she said with a smirk that only I could fully interpret. "Guess I stole the spotlight again." The room erupted in laughter, the kind born of slight discomfort mixed with alcohol and social obligation. People likely thought she was making a self-deprecating joke about sibling rivalry. Only Rachel standing rigid beside me, and I understood the deliberate cruelty of that statement. As if on cue, my mother rushed forward to embrace Diana, tears streaming down her face. "I'm going to be a grandmother," she exclaimed loud enough for everyone to hear. My father followed, clapping Marcus on the back with more enthusiasm than he'd shown about our engagement. Within moments, a crowd formed around Diana as she began answering questions about due dates and nursery plans. Rachel's parents remained seated, exchanging glances that conveyed their recognition of the inappropriate timing. Margaret Mitchell, always gracious, offered a tight smile in Diana's direction but made no move to join the crowd around her. I stood frozen, my face locked in what I hoped resembled a smile, but felt more like a grimace. Rachel's hand in mine was the only thing keeping me grounded as I watched our engagement party transform into Diana's pregnancy announcement celebration before our eyes. "Would you like another drink?" Rachel whispered to me, her voice steady despite the tension I could feel radiating through her body. "Something stronger than champagne," I managed to reply. As Rachel went to the bar, Diana broke away from her admirers and approached me, her hand still prominently displayed on her slightly rounded stomach. "Isn't it amazing?" she gushed, eyes wide with false innocence. "You're going to be an uncle, Cullen." "Congratulations," I said flatly. Interesting timing. Diana's expression hardened briefly before melting back into practiced joy. "When it's meant to be, it's meant to be." Marcus and I weren't planning this, but sometimes life gives you wonderful surprises. Before I could respond, Rachel returned with our drinks. Diana immediately shifted her attention. "Rachel, I hope you don't mind me sharing our news at your party. It just seemed like the perfect opportunity with everyone here." Rachel took a measured sip of her drink before answering. "It's certainly memorable," she said, her professional smile firmly in place, the same one she used in difficult client meetings. "We'll have to coordinate the wedding around the baby," Diana continued, either missing or ignoring Rachel's coolness. "I'd love to be in your bridal party, but I'll be about 8 months along if you're still planning on a spring wedding." The presumption that she would be included in our wedding party hit me like a slap. Before either of us could respond, Diana was pulled away by a friend of my mother's, eager to discuss baby shower plans. For the remainder of the evening, our engagement celebration had unmistakably shifted focus. Conversations that had been about our proposal story or wedding plans now revolved around Diana's pregnancy. I overheard multiple guests discussing baby names and whether Diana was having a boy or girl. The photographer we'd hired began taking more photos of Diana, showing off her barely visible bump than of Rachel and me. Even the congratulatory cards people had brought were now being supplemented with impromptu notes about Diana's blessing. Rachel and I circulated among our guests, maintaining our composure through sheer determination. We thanked people for coming, accepted congratulations that increasingly included mentions of becoming an uncle, and counted the minutes until we could reasonably leave our own engagement party. By 10:30, guests had begun to depart, many stopping to congratulate Diana and Marcus on their way out. My mother was already deep in conversation with Diana about converting the guest room at their house into a nursery for when you visit with the baby. The contrast with her lukewarm reaction to our engagement couldn't have been more stark. Rachel's parents made a point of speaking with us privately before they left. "We're very happy for you both," Margaret said firmly, her eyes conveying her understanding of the situation. "And we're looking forward to helping with wedding plans whenever you're ready to discuss them." By 11, only a handful of guests remained. Diana and Marcus were among the last to leave, Diana making a show of being exhausted because of the baby, though she'd had enough energy to dominate the entire evening. When we finally made it back to our apartment, Rachel and I moved through our evening routine in painful silence. It wasn't until we were lying in bed staring at the ceiling that the dam broke. "I can't believe she did that," I whispered, my voice catching. "Actually, I can believe it. I just hoped for once she wouldn't." Rachel turned to face me in the darkness. "It was calculated, Cullen. 4 months pregnant means she's known since before we got engaged. She waited to announce it tonight deliberately." The weight of that truth settled over me. Diana had planned this ambush, timed it perfectly, and executed it with precision. And once again I had let her get away with it. "I'm sorry," I said to Rachel, feeling the full burden of bringing my toxic family dynamics into our relationship. You didn't sign up for this. Rachel was quiet for a long moment before she spoke. Actually, I did. I knew who your sister was when I agreed to marry you. The question is, what are we going to do about it? That simple question hung in the air between us, a challenge and an opportunity. What were we going to do? For the first time, it occurred to me that we had choices, that we weren't obligated to continue playing by Diana's rules in the story of our lives together. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I know I'm done letting Diana write our story. Rachel reached for my hand in the darkness. Then let's write it ourselves. We lay awake long after midnight, the events of the evening replaying in our minds. Rachel's breathing had slowed beside me, but I knew she wasn't asleep. There was a heaviness in the room, a sense of disappointment that neither of us wanted to acknowledge fully. "Are you awake?" I finally whispered. "Haven't slept a minute," Rachel replied, turning to face me. In the faint glow from the streetlights outside, I could see her eyes were clear and alert. "I keep thinking about Diana's face when she made that announcement," I said. She wasn't just sharing news. She was winning. Rachel propped herself up on one elbow. Winning what, though? That's what I can't understand. Why does everything have to be a competition with her? It was a question I'd asked myself throughout my life. I think Diana believes there's only a limited amount of attention and love to go around, and she's terrified of not getting her share. "That's not how love works," Rachel said softly. "I know. But Diana doesn't." I sat up, fully switching on the bedside lamp. The sudden light made us both blink. The thing is, we've all been enabling her. My parents, obviously, but me too. I've been playing this game her entire life, always hoping that if I just let her have her way, eventually she'd be satisfied and stop. Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's like feeding a stray cat. It never stops coming back for more." "Exactly. And I'm done feeding the cat." The declaration felt both terrifying and liberating. Rachel sat up too, her face animated in a way I hadn't expected after such a deflating evening. "So what does that look like? Being done?" I ran a hand through my hair, thinking, I don't know exactly. But I know I don't want a big wedding anymore. I don't want to spend the next year planning an event that Diana will find some way to hijack. "We could elope," Rachel suggested, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "Would your parents be disappointed?" She considered this. They'd understand. They saw what happened tonight. But maybe there's a middle ground, something between eloping and the big traditional wedding. That's when the idea started to form. What about a destination wedding? Something small, intimate, just our closest friends and family. Rachel's eyes lit up. "I like that. Somewhere beautiful. Somewhere far away," I added with a wry smile. "Somewhere Diana wouldn't be invited," Rachel finished, her voice firm. The statement hung in the air between us. Not inviting my sister to our wedding would be a declaration of war in my family's eyes. But as I considered it, I realized I was ready for that battle. "Where would you want to go?" I asked, already reaching for my laptop on the nightstand. Rachel didn't hesitate. "Santorini. I've always dreamed of those white buildings against the blue sea." By 2 a.m, we were deep into research mode. Rachel had her tablet out, looking at venues, while I investigated travel logistics. The more we explored, the more excited we became. Santorini, in late October, just 6 weeks away, would still have beautiful weather but fewer tourists. We found a stunning cliffside venue with a terrace overlooking the caldera that could accommodate a small ceremony. "We'd need to limit it to 20 people max," I said, looking at the space dimensions. Rachel nodded, already making a list. "My parents, my sister, your parents, if they'll come without Diana, Jason and his wife, my cousin Emma and her husband." "What about the original guest list? The extended family and colleagues?" I asked. Rachel's smile turned mischievous. "We keep the reception date we already booked. We just show up already married." The boldness of the plan made me laugh out loud. Diana would lose her mind. "That's not why we're doing it. Rachel reminded me, though her eyes sparkled. We're doing it because this is our story to write. This is about us choosing what our wedding day looks like rather than conforming to expectations or traditions that don't serve us. We stayed up until dawn refining our plan. We would have a small, intimate ceremony in Santorini, with only our closest supporters, people who truly celebrated our love without agenda or drama. We would still host the previously planned reception when we returned, allowing extended family and colleagues to celebrate with us, but the pressure of the actual wedding would be behind us. Around 5 in the morning, Rachel called her parents. Despite the early hour, they answered immediately, clearly worried after last night's events. "We're fine," Rachel assured them, putting the call on speaker. "Better than fine, actually. We've made a decision about our wedding." She explained our plan for Santorini, speaking quickly with mounting excitement. When she finished, there was a brief silence. Well, her father finally said, "That sounds absolutely perfect for you both." "You're not disappointed?" Rachel asked. "Honey, all we want is for you to start your marriage in a way that feels right to you," her mother answered. "After what we saw last night, well, we understand why you'd want something more private." Their support nearly brought me to tears. My whole life I'd been conditioned to believe that family meant accepting toxic behavior for the sake of peace. Rachel's parents showed me what real family support looked like, prioritizing our happiness over their own preferences. As the sun rose, we finally fell asleep, the framework of our plan solidly in place. We would contact our wedding planner first thing Monday to adjust arrangements, order new save-the-date announcements, and begin planning our Santorini ceremony. For the first time since Diana grabbed that microphone, I felt a sense of control returning. This was our love story, and we were taking back the pen. Monday morning arrived with a renewed sense of purpose. Rachel and I had spent Sunday fine-tuning our plan, and now it was time to put it into action. Our first call was to Stephanie Winters, our wedding planner, who responded to our changed plans with professional calm. "A Santorini ceremony in 6 weeks is ambitious but doable," she said after listening to our vision, "especially with such a small guest list. We'll need to move quickly on flights, accommodations, and securing the venue." While Stephanie began working her magic on the logistics, Rachel and I focused on designing our new save-the-date announcements. We wanted something that clearly communicated our decision without sounding defensive or petty. After several drafts, we settled on wording that felt right. We've decided to celebrate our love privately in Santorini, Greece on October 24th. Only our closest supporters are invited to join us as we begin our journey together. A reception will follow for extended family and friends on the originally planned date of April 18th. The cards were elegant and understated, printed on heavyweight cream cardstock with a subtle watercolor wash of Santorini blues. We ordered express production and delivery, knowing that timing was critical to our plan. Over the next few days, we quietly informed our inner circle about the change of plans. Jason was immediately supportive, offering to help with anything we needed. Rachel's sister Tiffany was thrilled, already planning her Mediterranean wardrobe. My boss at the architectural firm, Mr. Calloway, was surprisingly understanding about my request for last-minute vacation time. "Take 2 weeks," he said. "Consider it an early wedding present." The cards arrived Thursday morning. Rachel and I spent that evening addressing envelopes, saving Diana's for last. I'll admit there was a certain satisfaction in writing her name on the envelope, imagining her reaction when she read that she wasn't included in our intimate Santorini ceremony. "Should we send it with delivery confirmation?" Rachel asked, only half joking. "Absolutely," I replied. "I want documented proof that she received it." We mailed the announcements Friday morning, with Diana's sent via priority mail with tracking. According to the Postal Service, her card would arrive Saturday by noon. Saturday morning, I found myself checking my phone more frequently than usual, anticipating the fallout. Rachel and I were having breakfast when the tracking update showed Diana's envelope had been delivered at 11:15. The countdown began. It took exactly 47 minutes. My phone rang at 12:02, Diana's name flashing on the screen. I looked at Rachel, who nodded encouragingly. "Speaker phone," she mouthed. I answered immediately, holding the phone away from my ear, as Diana's voice exploded through the speaker. "What the hell is this, Cullen?" Her voice was shrill with indignation. "I just got your little card, Santorini in October. And I'm not invited. Is this some kind of sick joke? I took a deep breath, reminding myself of all the moments throughout my life when Diana had deliberately hurt me for her own satisfaction. It's not a joke, Diana. Rachel and I have decided to have a very small private ceremony with only our closest supporters. I'm your sister, she screeched. How dare you exclude me from your wedding? This is because of the engagement party, isn't it? You're punishing me because I shared my good news. This isn't about punishment, Diana. It's about Rachel and me choosing what feels right for our wedding day. Bullshit. The raw fury in her voice was unlike anything I'd heard from her before. Usually Diana manipulated through tears and guilt, not open anger. You're trying to hurt me deliberately. Mom and Dad will never stand for this. They're welcome to join us in Santorini if they'd like, I said calmly. But if they choose not to come because you're not invited, that's their decision. Oh, they'll hear about this, Diana threatened. Everyone will hear about how you're excluding your own sister, your pregnant sister, from your wedding out of petty revenge. You're welcome to attend the reception in April, I offered, maintaining my composure. Many of our extended family and friends will be celebrating with us then. The reception, her laugh was bitter. After you're already married. Like some second-rate afterthought. Absolutely not. If I'm not good enough for your precious Santorini ceremony, then I won't demean myself by showing up to your pity party reception either. That's your choice, I said, feeling strangely liberated by her reaction. For the first time, I wasn't scrambling to appease Diana's emotions or manage the fallout of her drama. I was simply stating boundaries and allowing her to have her feelings about them. This isn't over, she hissed before hanging up. Rachel and I exchanged glances, a mixture of relief and apprehension passing between us. Well, that went about as expected, she said. The next call will be from my mother, I predicted. As if on cue, my phone rang again. This time it was my father, which surprised me. He rarely got involved in family conflicts, preferring to let my mother handle emotional matters. Cullen, he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Your mother is too upset to call. What's this about Santorini? I explained our decision as clearly and calmly as I could, emphasizing that this was about creating a meaningful experience for us as a couple, not about excluding anyone specifically. But you must see how this looks, my father argued. After Diana's announcement at your party, now you're planning a wedding she can't attend. People will talk, son. Let them talk, I replied, surprising myself with my firmness. Dad, Rachel, and I are starting our life together. We need to make choices that are right for us, not choices designed to manage other people's feelings or perceptions. There was a long silence. Your mother says if Diana isn't welcome, then she won't attend either. Though I'd anticipated this response, it still stung. I'm sorry to hear that. You're both welcome in Santorini, but I understand if you choose not to come. We'll see you at the reception in April. After hanging up, I sat in silence, processing the reality that my parents might not attend my wedding. Rachel placed her hand over mine. I'm sorry, Cullen. Don't be, I said, realizing I meant it. For the first time in my life, I'm not letting Diana's drama dictate my choices. That's worth celebrating, even if it comes with some pain. Over the next week, Diana launched what could only be described as a campaign against us. She called every extended family member, telling a twisted version of events where she was the innocent victim of our cruelty. She posted vague but pointed comments on social media about family betrayal and true colors being revealed. She even sent a group email to several mutual friends, detailing how we were punishing her for the blessing of her pregnancy. I blocked Diana on social media, and my phone refusing to engage with the drama. To our surprise, several family members reached out privately to express support for our decision. Diana has always been difficult, my Aunt Beverly said diplomatically during a phone call. It's about time someone stood firm with her. Even more surprising was the call that came 10 days after the announcements went out. It was my father speaking in hushed tones that suggested he didn't want my mother to overhear. Your mother and I have been talking, he said. We'd like to come to Santorini. Your wedding day. Well, we don't want to miss it, son. What about Diana? I couldn't help asking. There was a heavy sigh. We love your sister, but we're starting to see that perhaps we haven't always handled things well where she's concerned. This isn't about her. It's about you and Rachel. It was perhaps the most insight my father had ever shown into our family dynamics, and it nearly brought me to tears. Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know. The weeks leading up to our Santorini ceremony passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Diana made several more attempts to disrupt our plans, including a dramatic reconciliation attempt, where she showed up at our apartment unannounced, crying about how she just wanted to be part of her brother's special day. When her tears didn't work, she resorted to threats about making a scene at the reception. Through it all, Rachel and I remained focused on our goal, creating a wedding day that truly reflected our relationship and values. We booked flights, finalized the venue, arranged accommodations for our guests, and packed our bags. With each step, I felt the weight of decades of toxic family patterns lifting from my shoulders. We were writing our own story now, and it felt incredible. The morning of our wedding dawned with picture-perfect clarity over Santorini. From the balcony of our cliffside suite, I watched the sun rise over the caldera, painting the white buildings in shades of gold and pink. Rachel was still asleep inside, and I took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought us here. For so much of my life, I'd defined myself in relation to Diana. I was the brother who got overshadowed, the son who received less attention, the family member who maintained peace at his own expense. Standing there, gazing out over the Aegean Sea, I realized I was finally breaking that pattern. Today wasn't about Diana at all. It was about Rachel and me, and the life we were choosing to build together. The ceremony was scheduled for sunset on a private terrace overlooking the sea. Throughout the day, our small group of guests explored the narrow streets of Oia, taking in the breathtaking views and distinctive architecture. Rachel and I had arranged a group lunch at a local taverna, where my parents surprised everyone by being among the first to arrive. My mother approached me somewhat tentatively, her expression a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. "The hotel is lovely," she said, searching for neutral ground. "And the view is spectacular." "Thanks, Mom. I'm glad you and Dad could make it. I meant it sincerely." She hesitated, then added, "Diana sends her." "Well, not her best wishes exactly. But she did ask me to tell you she hopes you don't trip walking down the aisle." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, the closest she could come to acknowledging Diana's pettiness. "That sounds about right," I laughed. And somehow that moment of honest recognition broke the tension between us. As the afternoon progressed, Rachel and I separated to prepare for the ceremony. Jason kept me company in my suite, offering bourbon and steady conversation as I dressed in my tailored navy suit. "Nervous?" he asked, adjusting my tie. "Not about marrying Rachel," I replied honestly. "Just processing that my parents actually came without Diana." "People can surprise you," Jason said. "Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but they can surprise you." The ceremony site was more beautiful than we could have imagined. White chairs faced the caldera with an arch of local flowers framing the view. Lanterns lined the stone pathway where Rachel would walk. Our 20 guests, the people who truly supported our relationship without conditions or agendas, took their seats as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. My parents sat in the front row, my mother dabbing at her eyes already. Rachel's family filled the seats behind them, along with our closest friends. The absence of Diana and her drama created a palpable sense of peace that I hadn't fully anticipated. When Rachel appeared at the end of the pathway, everything else faded away. She wore a simple silk gown that caught the golden light, her hair adorned with small white flowers. Her father walked beside her, his pride evident in every step. In that moment, I understood what family could and should be: a foundation of love and support, not a source of pain and manipulation. We exchanged vows as the sun touched the sea, its light transforming the white buildings around us into a canvas of amber and rose. Rachel's voice was steady as she promised to stand beside me through whatever life brought our way. When I spoke my vows, I included a promise to always prioritize our partnership above external pressures, a commitment that held special significance given our journey to this moment. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, as the last rays of sunlight illuminated our first kiss as a married couple. Our small gathering erupted in applause, genuine joy reflecting on every face. The The celebration continued into the night at a local restaurant we had reserved exclusively for our party. We dined on Greek specialties, danced to traditional music, and shared stories until the early hours. At one point, I found myself alone with my father on the restaurant's balcony, both of us nursing glasses of ouzo. "I'm sorry, Cullen," he said unexpectedly. "For what?" "For not seeing what Diana's behavior was doing to you all these years. For not standing up sooner." He looked older in that moment, weighted with regret. "It's okay, Dad. I'm learning that it's never too late to change patterns." He nodded, clinking his glass against mine. "Your mother and I have been talking a lot since you sent those announcements. About Diana, about how we raised you both. It's not easy to face your mistakes as a parent." "You did your best," I offered. "We could have done better," he acknowledged. "But seeing you today, the man you've become, despite our failures, I'm proud of you, son. Not just for your accomplishments, but for your character." We spent a magical week in Santorini, with our intimate group exploring ancient ruins, sailing around the island, and creating memories untainted by family drama. Rachel and I extended our stay for a private honeymoon after our guests departed, savoring the beginning of our marriage in a bubble of peace and connection. Reality, of course, awaited our return. Diana had not been idle during our absence. She'd continued her campaign of portraying herself as the victim, even going so far as to organize a family dinner the weekend before our scheduled reception, presumably to solidify alliances against us. To my surprise, my parents declined her invitation, choosing instead to have dinner with Rachel and me, our first night back. Over pasta and wine in our apartment, they cautiously broached the subject of the upcoming reception. "Diana says she's not coming," my mother informed us. "But I think she'll change her mind as the date gets closer." "She's welcome to attend," I said, "as long as she can respect that this is our celebration." "We've made that clear to her," my father said, his newfound backbone still surprising me. "Your mother and I have decided it's time Diana understood that there are consequences to her behavior." The weeks leading up to our reception were surprisingly peaceful. Diana made several attempts to contact me, but only after I'd unblocked her number at my mother's request. Her messages oscillated between angry accusations and tearful pleas for reconciliation, but always with the underlying theme of her being the wronged party. After consultation with Rachel, I agreed to meet Diana for coffee 2 weeks before the reception. She arrived at the cafe, noticeably pregnant now, using her condition to garner sympathetic glances from other patrons. "You look well," she said stiffly after ordering a decaf latte. "Married life must agree with you." "It does," I replied simply. "How are you feeling? Physically or emotionally?" "Because physically, I'm growing a human being, and emotionally I'm dealing with my brother excluding me from his wedding." Her tone was sharp, but I detected a new uncertainty beneath it. "Diana, I didn't invite you to Santorini because I wanted my wedding day to be peaceful and positive. Based on our history, especially what happened at our engagement party, I didn't believe you could be there without making it about you somehow." Her eyes widened at my directness. "That's not fair. It's not about fair. It's about patterns. Our entire lives, you've found ways to pull focus and attention to yourself, especially during my important moments." "That's not true," she protested, but with less conviction than I expected. "It is true, and on some level you know it." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "The difference now is that I'm not angry about it anymore. I understand that you have your own struggles that drive that behavior, but understanding doesn't mean I have to keep allowing it." Diana was quiet for a long moment, stirring her latte absently. "Mom and Dad have been different since your wedding. They used to always take my side. Maybe they're realizing that wasn't always helping you," I suggested. She looked up sharply. "So what now? You've turned everyone against me, and I'm just supposed to accept it." "No one is against you, Diana. We just want healthier relationships with you. You're going to be a mother soon. Don't you want different patterns for your child?" That question seemed to reach her in a way nothing else had. Her hand moved protectively to her stomach. "I don't want my baby to feel like I did growing up," she admitted quietly. "How did you feel growing up?" I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. "Like I was never enough on my own," she whispered. like I had to be exceptional or dramatic, just to be noticed. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. By the time we parted, we'd reached a tentative understanding. Diana agreed to attend the reception and promised to behave appropriately. I didn't fully trust her commitment, but it was a start. The reception itself was everything we'd hoped our original wedding might be, but without the pressure of the actual ceremony. We greeted guests as husband and wife, shared our Santorini photos, and celebrated with the wider circle of friends and family. Diana arrived with Marcus, subdued by her standards but present. She offered congratulations that seemed almost sincere and made no attempts to redirect attention to her pregnancy. Over the following months, my relationship with Diana evolved into something I'd never thought possible. A cautious but real connection based on mutual respect rather than manipulation and resentment. The birth of her daughter, Sophia, seemed to truly change something in her. Motherhood gave her a source of purpose and attention that fulfilled her in ways that drama never had. Rachel and I established clear boundaries with my family that allowed us to maintain our own healthy relationship while gradually rebuilding family connections on new terms. My parents, perhaps motivated by their role as grandparents, made genuine efforts to recognize and change toxic patterns. A year after our Santorini wedding, Rachel and I discovered we were expecting our own child. When we shared the news with my family, Diana was the first to congratulate us without making comparisons or trying to one-up our announcement. It was a small moment, but it represented a massive shift. Looking back now, I realized that standing up to Diana wasn't just about asserting myself in one specific situation. It was about breaking generational patterns of enabling unhealthy behavior. It was about showing that true family support means encouraging growth and accountability, not preserving comfort at all costs. Rachel and I are committed to raising our child with clear boundaries and unconditional love, teaching them that they are enough exactly as they are, without needing to create drama or competition to be valued. The legacy we're building isn't about avoiding conflict at all costs, but about handling it with honesty and respect. If you're dealing with a Diana in your life, remember that you deserve to write your own story, one where your happiness isn't sacrificed on the altar of someone else's insecurity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for them, is to stop enabling patterns that hurt everyone involved. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who always stole your spotlight? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. I am Six. End of section. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries even with family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the happiest endings come after you find the courage to change the script.